Welcome to Communicating Effectively Across Diverse Groups. Today we will learn a variety of topics, such as defining cultures, verbal communication, nonverbal communication, barriers to communication, cultural myths, advice on proper communication, coaching and training, reflective listening, and speaking hints. Defining cultures. Even the definition of culture is interpreted in many different ways. Some believe that culture is associated with levels of society or with nationality or geography. According to anthropologists, culture is a way of life. The key word here is interpretations and meanings. The layers of culture. According to Gert Hofstede, there are 6 major levels of culture. The first level is a national level, according to one's country. The second level is a regional or religious or linguistic affiliation level, as most nations are composed of culturally different regions and are ethnic, religious, or language groups. The third level is a gender level, according to whether a person was born as a girl or as a boy. The fourth level is a generation level, which separates grandparents from parents from children. The fifth level is a social class level, associated with educational opportunities and with a person's occupation or profession. The sixth level for those who are employed, or organizational or corporate level, according to the way employees have been socialized by their work organizations. The icebergs of cultural communication. As you glance to the left image, the cultural iceberg, 10% of what you are actually seeing is customs, mores, and courtesies. But 90% is difficult to see, such as values, priorities, and assumptions. Moving your eyes to the right, the image here is the iceberg concept of culture. The peak of the iceberg, which is easy to see, is the way you dress, your accent, your age, your gender, your language, so forth. And things that you don't see are eye behavior, facial expression, body language, sense of self, emotional response patterns, and so forth. Context. Cultures can be arrayed on a spectrum ranging from low context to high context. Low context cultures depend on explicit verbal messages. High context cultures rely more on intrapersonal relationships. Information. In order to understand cultural expectations better, we must ask ourselves the following questions. How fast does the message travel from one part of the organization to another? Can and does the information travel directly, or must it go through levels or channels? How much context is needed to ensure that the information is understood? Does the culture prefer words, graphics, or some combination? Should the information be organized, directly or indirectly? And does the culture prefer written communication to oral? Differences to be considered. The most important differences we see each day in business are race, age, physical ability, nationality, religion, and language. 6 fundamental patterns of cultural differences. The first one is communication styles, such as verbal and nonverbal. The second is attitudes towards conflict. Some cultures view conflict as a positive thing, while others view it as something to be avoided. The third one is different approaches to completing tasks. From culture to culture, there are different ways that people move toward completing tasks. Some reasons include different access to resources, different judgments of rewards associated with task completion, different notions of time, and varied ideas about how relationship building and task-oriented work should go together. The fourth one is different decision-making styles. The roles individuals play in decision-making vary widely from culture to culture. For example, in the U.S., decisions are frequently delegated. In the Southern European and Latin American countries, there is a strong value placed on holding decision-making responsibilities oneself. The fifth is different attitudes towards disclosure. In some cultures, it is not appropriate to be frank about emotions, about reasons behind a conflict or misunderstanding, or even about personal information. Keep this in mind when you are in a dialogue or when you are working with others. Different approaches to knowing is the sixth one. And notable differences occur among cultural groups when it comes to the ways people come to know things. Recent works demonstrate that Our own society is paying more attention to previously overlooked ways of knowing. Indeed, these different approaches to knowing could affect ways of analyzing a community problem or finding ways to resolve it. Respecting our differences and working together. Don't be prejudiced. Become aware of our differences. See our differences as a positive thing. Take up the challenge. It will make you a better person. Time and space. Time is the big difference. In the West, time is seen as quantitative. In the East, time feels unlimited. Cultural approaches to time are not always applied in good faith, but may serve as a variety of good motives such as asserting power, superiority, advantage, and control. We cannot separate language from culture. There are language differences in industries, professions, functions, and genders. Language includes words, syntax, and vocabulary, as well as the various dialects and the jargon of disciplines. Consider hiring an interpreter. Power. Cultures differ tremendously in how they view power and equality. Title or no title? Is this important? How old are you? Does it matter? Are you educated enough? How is it relevant? Collectivism versus individualism. Collectivism, according to Hofstede, pertains to societies in which people from birth onwards are integrated into strong, cohesive in-groups. Individualism, according to Hofstede, pertains to societies in which the ties between individuals are loose, every man for himself and his family. Spirituality and tradition. Questions to ponder when communicating with groups that are expressing spiritual or other traditional values are, does this cultural group believe in a higher being? Or they're more traditional in their beliefs? What are the predominant religious influences? What are the daily religious practices, expectations, and holidays? And how will these influence interaction on a daily basis? Guidelines for multicultural collaboration. Learn from generalizations, but be careful. Practice makes perfect. You're not always right. No finger pointing. Listen to them. Don't just hear them. Respect. Know your history. Awareness of current power imbalances, and remember differences in cultural norms. Face and face saving. In a broad definition, face includes ideas of status, power, courtesy, insider and outsider relations, humor, and respect. Face is the starting points of individualism and communitarianism. Remembering faces is a good business. Verbal communication. Verbal communication is comprised of articulation of words and their pronunciations. Verbal communication is interpreted through things such as pitch, volume, tone, rate of speech, and sign language. It is important to think before you speak. Nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is unspoken. Nonverbal communication are exhibited through facial expressions, eye contact, listening, hand gestures, body distance, body position, and silence and pauses even. For example, not all cultures shake hands. Some bow, nod, or simply do nothing. Barriers to communication. Anything that prevents understanding of the message is a barrier to communication. Many physical and psychological barriers exist, such as culture, background and bias, noise, even ourselves, perception of what's around us, messages, information, environment, smothering, and stress. Cultural myths. The first myth is, are we really the same? As a discussion of cultural variables demonstrates, we are not all the same, and it can be dangerous to assume that we are. The second one would be, I just need to be myself in order to really connect. While we never want to violate our own sense of identity, and will even find it difficult, if not impossible to do, we do need to make an effort to dress and communicate verbally and non-verbally as is appropriate to the day-to-day customs. The third one would be, I have to adopt the practices of other culture in order to succeed. We should adapt to instead of try to adopt the practices of another culture. And the fourth one is, it's really all about personality. While personality profiles, such as those discussed previously, are useful in helping understanding behavioral differences, drawing a direct correlation between a personal type and a culture can result in stereotypes that limit ourselves in understanding of cultural differences. Advice on proper communication. Here are some hints. Be open and respectful. Know the social customs. Learn as much about the culture, history, people, and even languages as reasonable. Obtain pointers and feedback from members of the culture. Be patient, be flexible, and value the time needed to develop relationships. Keep a sense of humor, and keep language simple and avoid jargon. Cross-cultural coaching and training. Remember that there is coaching and training available. A coaching relationship is a dynamic partnership designed to support people as they take action to clarify and realize their visions and goals. Coaching is flexible. Always remember that. Receive help and training such as assisting with adjustments, working through cross-cultural conflict or negation, and managing foreign nationals in teams. Reflective listening. Listen is the same thing as understanding. Reflect what you have heard. Verbally reinstate in your own words. Other names for reflective listening are the empathetic ear, active listening, the understanding response, verbal pacing, paraphrasing. Don't just hear it, listen to it. Speaking hints. When speaking or trying to explain something, ask the listeners if they are following you. Ensure the receiver has a chance to comment or ask questions. Be clear about what you say. Look at the receiver. Vary your tone and pace. Do not ignore signs of confusion. Well, guys, this is it for today. The last thing we're going to talk about is always remembering these key points in order to communicate effectively across every culture. Listen well, speak well, respect one another, and ask for feedback. Thank you for your time.